Davis, it's a pleasure to have you back on the podcast today. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
Good, good. Yeah. No, I'm really good, thank you. And I was just saying to you earlier, like it's my first podcast I've done this year, so it's a pleasure to have you, as the first person of 2022. To have you on, and we always have a good podcast. We've done, numerous podcasts in the past, and we said today we're going to go with the flow and talk about, like mindset, self-awareness,
Mhm.
um, energy, health, and some other things as well. And, I think they're all vital things that we should all, consider in our lives, in our day to day,
Yeah.
because how you feel and, what you do in your day to day kind of has an effect, later on in your life, the next week, the next day. And if you feel better in yourself, you're going to perform better, I think, overall. Um, like where do you kind of sit with all that?
I definitely agree. Um, Living in such a I already lived in a fast-paced environment, and in the last 6 months, I've been even in a more fast-paced environment with work. And it's clear, I've seen for myself, it's very clear that the time I take to take care of my health, the better I perform in my everyday life and my work, and the better I feel. But then at the same time, I live a busy life, so then it becomes a challenge to do that. And then it just overall it takes a toll on you physically, emotionally, mentally by overlooking. And sometimes we write off, oh, I can do that later. I can take care of my health later. I can eat better later. And then in the long run, you're not doing yourself a favor.
Yeah, so and I think like if you're in a high paced job or, I think especially maybe if you work from home, maybe there's challenges with that as well.
Yeah.
Like you're not getting daylight, probably not moving around as much, and trying to make that time to do X, Y, Z. Go for a walk or jog or whatever. And I think like I said in life, it's depending on your trade and work and life in society is very busy as well.
Hmm.
You we sometimes make those sacrifices where we might be working and then we might opt for a snack or we might do the easy option, and then before you know it we might have done that for a week. I think we've all done it, or a
Yep.
couple of days, and it kind of knocks you out of swing. And it's like that, that self-awareness, isn't it? It's okay to do those things, but I think it's that balance and noticing how much you're doing it and how you overall feel, I think.
Yeah. And it's like I noticed myself, so when you live, and we live in a society that easily takes our focus away from what's important to us, and it's taking that second to kind of refocus and say, okay, what did I do this week? And did I do anything that I intended? Did I meal prep? Did I eat properly? Did I eat clean? Or did I go to the gym? Did I take that moment to talk to that person that I love? And actually saying, going back and reflecting, and then you're Friday or the week, halfway through the week, and you realize I didn't do any of that. I didn't eat, maybe but drink a cup of coffee and eat some crackers all day, most of the week. And refocusing in that moment, you can say, hey, the rest of the week I'm going to make this a better, I'm going to put a stronger effort into trying to accomplish what it is that I wanted to do, what it is that I'm trying to do to take better care of myself.
Yeah, definitely, I agree with you. And I think, like, would you say, I mean, I think for a lot of people, getting back into the swing of things, January time in the new year is quite a big thing because, like, not everyone. I mean, not everyone drinks. Not everyone celebrates Christmas differently. But I think Christmas and New Year, and that kind of span of the holiday season, we sometimes may drink more or eat more and do
Mhm.
things we don't usually do. Some people do it, in excess, and I think it's that getting back in the driver's seat almost of January in the new year.
Yeah.
Um, like, do you find, like, for yourself, or have you seen it before, where people sometimes feel that those kind of blues, don't they? Like winter, January after Christmas and New Year, because people have been on that kind of high almost.
Um, I personally, I don't know. I can
Yeah,
speak for myself, and
yeah,
most of my life I've never spent celebrating any of the holidays or Christmas, January, New Year's, none of that. Um, I do realize though from observing, and this year I did observe and celebrate, and yes, I can see that kind of where you're just out having fun and you let loose, that time of year, that's the time you look forward to, and then afterwards it's like, oh, stress, 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 where I got to work, 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 my bank account's low again, and all the other stuff that comes along with it. But I think too, the new year, setting the new year as the goal or the deadline or the start date to take care of yourself and to do things. A lot of people look at that like a reset. It's new year. The only issue I have with that is you only have a new year once a year. So you only get to reset technically if you live that way once a year. So if you fall off the bandwagon in February, March, then you're no longer motivated to try and continue. I personally look at it like, you know, all year I'm going to, whether it was January 1st is my time to reset, or like let loose during the end of the year and the holidays, or not. It's I'm going to work X amount of time really hard, really smart, take care of my health as best as I can. And then these months, usually it's September, October, November, or July, September, October. I'm going to kind of let loose a little bit more. I'm not going to be as strict, but I'm going to have fun because you have to enjoy your life as well. Otherwise, you have a life that's being wasted, I almost feel like. So it's that coming from that New Year's perspective, try not to just, or I would say, try and reevaluate and see if you can actually make every day a reset. Every day above ground is a new day, just like January 1st. Why not? Every day you did wrong, you did bad yesterday, you didn't care for your health yesterday, you didn't talk to the people you love yesterday. Well, today's a new day. You have a new opportunity to go ahead and do that.
yeah. No, I really agree with you, and I think like before we jumped on the call, like you said that, and like we said, there are plenty of people who aren't here who would love to have your problems, and like you said, every day above ground is a good day, because like you said, have some people wait and have that reset or that mindset, once a year, where you can kind of incorporate that into every day, and you have to, like you said, work and do what you got to do. Excuse me. And I think, you have to have that downtime, don't you? And that balance. It's that kind of striking that balance because and having that enjoyment. It's a really kind of mindful place you kind of have to put yourself in, isn't it? Really.
Hmm. And I think that's one of the things that doesn't get taught in society very well is balance. There's always you're either working hard or you're, like, and maybe it's just myself, but I feel like when it comes to, for instance, mindset of people who play video games, for just using that as an example, you're either a diehard gamer, all you do is game, you don't take care of your health, you just eat snacks, or you don't game at all and you work, 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 and maybe you might go out for a drink or some one or the other, and it doesn't have to be that way. It's not all gym or no gym. It's not all healthy or no healthy. It's when you're above ground, there has to be that balance of I get to have some of these things that I enjoy. I like to play video games. I like to eat chips. I like to eat sweets. And then but I also like to take care of my health. I like to go to the gym. I like to, and just finding that threshold where for you, works best for you and your health and your body. And I think that's really, for myself, I've kind of come to that term where I can understand that about myself, where I know where that threshold is, where that line is for the most part. And it allows me to enjoy the best of both worlds, where I'm not miserable because I'm doing something that I really don't want to do and I don't appreciate because, just because I'm trying to live a certain lifestyle or live to a certain expectation or standard that I may have defined for myself that's completely unbalanced.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that balance is definitely key. And I think it's you almost feel like you've earned that as well, don't you? I think if you've done the other bit, going to the gym, going to work or whatever, then you have that downtime to play a game or to do X, Y, Z. You kind of like that kind of rewarding yourself because you've done Do you know what I mean? A, B, C, D, E, F. It's it's that kind of, right, if you did that other stuff all the time, you'd be like, I need that other kind of balance, other kind of thing to weigh this out. And like you said, I kind of like playing video games. I got the new Switch recently. Me and my girlfriend played Mario Kart and stuff like, last week. And you have to have that bit of downtime, like regardless of what it is, like especially if you're working, you're busy. It's that recharge, isn't it? And everyone kind of recharges differently.
Yep. And I was gonna say something and I totally forgot.
That's all good. No, it happens to me a lot.
Full ADHD moment right there.
It's okay.
But I totally agree. And it had to do with when you said, with the reward, you kind of have to reward yourself. The funny thing is, sometimes like when I'm at work or I'm in an environment and people are talking about losing weight and working out and eating junk food, and they're like, I work out so I can eat the junk food. And it's like, I only work out to burn the 1,000 calories that I'm about to consume. And I'm like looking at them and I'm like, that's one way to think about it. But at the same time, that's probably not the best way to think about it. You should, a better way, possibly a better way is to look at it like, I work out to take care of myself. And then at said point in time, I'm going to enjoy something that I enjoy. So instead of I'm just working out so I can have, because it now makes you think of exercise and self-care as a chore that you have to. It's like when your parents said you have to clean your room before you can watch TV. You're only cleaning your room because you want to get to the other thing, but not because you're actually learning to enjoy the benefits of living in a clean environment. Hopefully you pick that up subconsciously, but it's the same exact way with those type of trends. It's better to look at it as, and I'm going to work out, I'm going to take care of myself. I'm going to work out 5 days a week or whatever your goal is. And then 1 day a week or 2 days a week, I'm going to let loose a little bit and enjoy some ice cream. I'm going to enjoy some of these snacks. I'm going to enjoy a drink or 2 or 3. But at the same time, I know that it's in moderation.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think if you're doing that in the moderation, I think that works better. And I think you appreciate it more. And I think, like, if people, like you said, are just doing A because they're going to get B, that work you're putting in the gym or whatever, it's like you're not kind of making any progress. You're just kind of staying where you are because you can't eating X, Y, Z or drinking X, Y, Z, just counteracting what you're doing, and you just kind of probably, do you know what I mean?
You're just trying to stay right there. That's
there,
it.
Yeah, exactly.
And and again, there's different perspectives, different opinions. Everybody's got different opinion at the different point in life. And one thing I say at work and I tell my team is there's sometimes there's a bad way to do things, but there's not a ton of bad ways to do things in life. There's more ways that there's a way to do it, and then there's a better way to do it. And that's really, where I'm looking at of, it might not be it's not a bad way if, you're trying to maintain where you're at and maintain that weight, burn 1,000 calories, eat 1,000 calories. That might be the way that works for you. A better way might be understanding that you're taking care of yourself so you can enjoy these other things later on in moderation, and it might be more beneficial for you.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think it's a lot of self-discipline, isn't it? I think self-discipline comes into it. I think when you go deeper into it and peel back those layers, you think about your environment, what is around, where you live, your friends, people's moods. I think some cities and districts and places have got like fast food places or restaurants, very close by. So it's easy for people to kind of go, oh, I'm kind of hungry, I'll go to XYZ. I mean, for me, I have to drive 20 minutes, 15 minutes to go to somewhere like that. So it's kind of like a treat if I do that, But, it's like your friends, like sometimes your friends or people you work with might say, oh, let's go to so-and-so. And then you're like, so there's a lot of self-discipline with it, isn't there? and everyone's so different. And I think when you peel back more layers, people are quite complex because there might be certain reasons why people may drink or eat certain things, isn't they? Like they might lack, something about in themselves. They might feel a certain way about themselves, so then they engage in eating or drinking something to make them distract themselves or feel a certain way.
Yeah. I think a lot of, it comes down to an extent being self-aware, being aware of what your tendencies are, and then understanding, why you're doing what you're doing. For instance, took, alcohol, you mentioned, you might feel a type of way and begin drinking. I remember there was a time where I was going through a breakup, and I noticed that I was leaning on alcohol as a crutch, and I was drinking, a bunch of decent amount of alcohol, 500 milliliters or so in a day in a session, just because I was trying to find a way to cope. And at first I didn't realize it, but then when I realized it was going on for 2 weeks, and then I'm like, I'm at the store again buying another bottle yet again. And then I said, I realized, how much alcohol did I consume? Well, this is a lot more than usual. Why am I? Because I'm dealing with this breakup. And then, you have to come to that understanding of, and it takes a measure of humility too, to say, I'm developing this problem, or I'm coping with this in not a healthy way, or I'm depressed and I need to find a better way to deal with this depression instead of leaning on the bottle or drugs or whatever it might be, or food. And again, it takes humility, because that might mean reaching out to somebody, that might mean acknowledging that you're doing something that you thought you may never have done, or you're damaging yourself unintentionally.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I agree with you. And I think, I can definitely relate to that, from the past, breakups. And I think we sometimes we're not aware of it, like you said, until a week, two after, and you kind of have a think about it, or you have that moment of clarity, and you're like, hang on a sec, like I'm spending XYZ amount, or it's not my usual routine of doing this. And I think it's that like you said, having that humility and that accountability, and kind of owning where you're at, and changing that narrative, because we all have coping mechanisms and ways of dealing with things, isn't it? But there's other ways of kind of dealing with things. And just talking about that, you mentioned when we before we came on, you mentioned like your friend did something like before the new year. Like, do you mind, you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So one of my good friends, he actually went ahead, before the new year, and he
Yeah,
committed suicide. Um, and part of it, he had some ongoing depression. He had some ongoing personal things going on in his life,
yeah, I'm
and
sorry about that.
it, and it's part of being somebody, being somebody who has had suicidal thoughts and tendencies
Yeah,
to suicide in the past. You get to a moment, a lot of times for a lot of people, they don't have a suicidal tendency in general. They're just in a position where they're stuck in a rut and a routine, and they feel like there's no way out, and it's difficult, and they have no one to turn to. They don't know who to turn to, and there's always somebody, there's always somebody that will listen. There's always somebody, that can help you. And then there's also the part where you have to be self-aware at the same time, and catch those tendencies or those thoughts as they're coming in, and reflect on it, and and ponder, is this really something that I really feel, or is it just because of all the thoughts and everything that's happening right now? I feel like the world is crashing down on me, when that's just a moment in that time. Might be that day, that week, or that month, but in the long term, if you continue living, things always get better.
yeah, yeah. No, I truly believe what you said, and I think, I'm sorry about what happened to your friend, and
Yeah.
I think when people are in that place, you have to really kind of log down, I think, and address, your thoughts or what's coming up. And you know, like I said, everyone deals with things differently, but when you're in that place and you've got that going on and you feel like there's no way out, you know, it's trying to speak to those, you know, trying to reach out to speak to people about it, isn't it? Or trying to seek those services. Um, you know, like, and I've been in, you know, places as well in the past where, you know, like PTSD and depression stuff. When you're in that place, you do feel like there's no way out. You know,
Mhm.
you don't always want to talk about how you feel. I think especially with men, um, you know, even some women are like, you know, not wanting to talk about, you know, how they feel. So it's both ways. But I think is it like a statistically, you know, is it like a higher in men, male suicide, and I think it's something that we have to really be mindful of and be there for people, and just, you know, like. But the thing is, people put on a brave face, don't they? Sometimes, and we all put on a mask.
Mhm.
And the thing is, people like think they, you know, they don't realize that someone's okay because they're appearing so good to just be okay. Um, you know, and I think Christmas and New Year is a very difficult time for some people.
Yeah, I I think so, and you know, you never realize too. Um, I'd seen a meme. It was a meme or like a post on somebody's
Yeah,
Instagram, and it basically said, "You never know who's going through depression or who's suffering because some of the people who are suffering the most are some of the best actors." And you know, being somebody who, you know, and of course this was years ago, suicidal and attempting suicide, nobody around me that was in my inner circle would have imagined or knew that I was in that state of mind, because I don't want to disturb other people. I don't want to bother them. I don't want to feel like a bother. It's something that I don't like opening up and sharing my thoughts with people in general, especially, you know, ones that typically in society are frowned upon. And it's, I think, you know, women, okay, of course, women commit suicide as well, but it's more acceptable for a female to vocalize their feelings and how they're feeling overwhelmed versus a male who's supposed to be masculine and be able to have everything under control and put together, you know, then they shouldn't have those kind of thoughts. They should be able to handle that kind of stuff on their own. And just like any human being, we have limits on our psyche. We have limits, physical and mental limits of what we can bear with and how much we can take on at one time. And you might not want to discuss that because you feel like now you're giving a piece of your manliness or your masculinity away because you're unable to handle that. And that's why it's important, I think, when in those good times, developing those friendships with individuals or providers or therapists, that you can, or those relationships that you can, if that time ever happened, you ever happen to be in that type of situation, you know you're going to have that one friend or that therapist that's not going to judge you and frown upon you and make you feel bad for feeling that type of way.
yeah, yeah, most definitely. And I think like, and I think especially with the internet, there's plenty of support groups. There's plenty of websites. I mean, I was kind of blown away by, you know, how many Facebook groups there are. Um, you know, and social media, like there are really good parts of social media where people, if they feel a certain way, as they can connect with other people who might be going through similar things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there are outlets out there for people to kind of reach out to, if that makes sense. And there's always, like you said, someone out there who's willing to listen to someone.
Yeah.
And if someone's in that place, you know, like you said, like, you know, when you was in that place, you know, other people probably didn't know because you kind of, you know, had that good front and act where, and, you know, and there's that thing of don't want to waste people's time and, you know, just get on with it. And I think sometimes people we take things on from a parent sometimes, or people might say, you know, just get on with it, you know, just,
Mm-hmm.
and, and I think, you know, especially males, like, you know, it's that kind of, you know, you want to appear strong and all the rest of it.
Yeah. And it's definitely outside of the comfort zone for a lot of males,
Mm,
especially, you know. And the other thing too is myself, I didn't realize I have a learning disability, ADHD, which it's a behavioral learning disorder, and I was unaware of that for a long time, and then fought, through a lot of self-reflection, a lot of self-awareness, and reflecting back on situations and why, if I went through a depressing bout and and then I come out of it, and then I'm just like, why am I so depressed? Why am I so, I'm not now, but I was for 3 weeks. Why was I so mad at myself? And why was I feeling that way? A lot of it stems from the symptoms of my disorder and going untreated. So there's the other thing too, where, there might be an underlying factor or condition that might not be depression itself. It might be something that's a contributing factor and is causing you to be depressed. And, and even until recently, I still battle with my ADHD and the symptoms, and I do stuff that makes me upset about, pisses myself off, and so forth or whatnot. But it's become easier to manage and to snap myself out of those modes, because I know there's an underlying cause and how to correct that underlying cause, or at least minimize the impact that my disorder has.
Yeah, definitely. And sometimes, people have that kind of counter effect from something else that's going on, but you're kind of on top of it. You are aware of it now, and you kind of probably know how to manage and deal with things, in a
Mhm.
good way.
Yeah.
And
And that takes humility too. It took me
yeah,
3 years from the first time that my doctor suggested it, that I might have that, and it took 3 years or a little bit longer for me to even come to the terms that I might actually have that disorder, might need to be diagnosed with it, and
mm,
seek treatment for it. And I'm glad I did eventually. I wish I would have done it sooner, because a lot of the stress, a lot of the lows in my life would have and could have been avoided if I would have been humble enough, because I didn't feel like, oh, I don't want to be classified as somebody with a disorder, or that's not me. I'm above any kind of disorders, because I don't have any that disorder in my family that I'm aware of or whatever. And ultimately, my ego, my pride, was limiting me and making things harder for me than they actually had to be.
yeah, that's it. And I think, like when I first heard like your story, when I first ever saw you on like TV Gary V, I think it was,
Mhm.
like it was really inspiring, and I think like from where you are now, from what's happening in like, your past and what you spoke about, in that moment, like, I think you're doing really great, and I think it's quite powerful, where you stand today and everything that you do, and what you're about, you know, given like what you spoke about, if that makes
Mhm.
sense.
Yeah, and I think that's something else I think I would love for your viewers to do, is take a moment and just reflect on where they are right now, where they were, where they came from, and how what they could have, what the road they were down. Because everybody, no matter if you're in a good place or a great place in your life or a shitty place in your life, there's a way that you could have fucked up even more and went down an even darker or worse path. And sometimes we don't take that second to appreciate where we are right now. It's might even like myself right now, I'm not the best version of me. I'm not in the best place that I want to be in life at my age where I'm at. But you know what, looking at, when I have those thoughts and then I take a moment, I reflect, and I'm like, coming from where I came from, all the obstacles and hurdles I had to overcome to get to where I'm at right now. It's even, and I'm not trying to just inflate myself, but it's an astonishing amount of hurdles. It's remarkable. It took a lot of work. It took a lot of effort and determination, and a lot of trial and error, a lot of falls and failures. And we don't really give ourselves the credit that we deserve, especially when we come from challenged backgrounds, or we weren't spoon fed our entire lives. And even for those that maybe have been spoon fed their entire lives, they could have made a bunch of decisions that could have put them in a worse spot again in their life. So we need to appreciate ourselves and where we are.
Yeah, no, I love that, and I think we have to take those small moments, like you said, to reflect and to look at where we once were, like you said, and you can see the growth and you can see the other paths that we could have gone down, and or how worse things could have been. And like you said, we're all kind of work in progress, if that makes sense, aren't we? Really, I think as long as you're putting one foot forward in front of the other, and you're looking at how far you've came in X amount of years, and how how you once felt, and I think we should do that more. Like I think like checking in with yourself and thinking about
Yeah.
X, Y, Z. A lot of people kind of go, and it's like, well, hang on a sec. Are you the same? Do you know what I mean? Are you in the same place? Are you the same person? 5, 10 years ago, or even a year ago? So like, I think this is the thing. It's you could be 25, 28, 30, and have lived more than someone who's a lot older. It's that kind of, that what happens in those years, isn't it? In that time, it doesn't matter. You get people who go through a lot of stuff, and that, they're 17, 18, and they've been through a lot more than a lot of what other people experience, who are a lot older, if that makes sense. And there's all that maturity, and all these experiences shape you, don't they? And it builds that resilience inside of you, even though we might not know it or think about it.
And something else, talking about that and talking about growth, is you don't the biggest hurdle I see, and I've seen it myself, and I observe in other people, that are younger than me, is we put limiting factors on ourselves. We put ourselves in this box, and this is all we get to do. And we don't step outside of that box. I only work these kind of jobs. I only have these two friends. I only do these two activities. It's like one of my employees, or one of the agents that works in my department, they go and talk about stuff that I've done and accomplished, or different jobs I've worked, and her response is like, "Oh, you've really done a lot, and you've really worked a lot of different jobs, or you've and I'm like, yes, because I want to experience life. But then at the same time, recently I kind of got into a rut of just doing the same stuff, because life gets busy, and it just we as humans, we try and just take the path of least resistance and make it the easiest. Talk to the same 1, 2, 3 people, no longer going out, putting myself out there trying to make new friends, not trying to engage with anybody new. And part of it is because we're afraid. We're afraid of change and putting ourselves out there and trying new things, because we're gonna fail. It's new. We might be good at it, we might not. We don't want to embarrass ourselves. We don't want to, who likes being uncomfortable, and feel like out of breath or hyperventilating or having anxiety. But at the same time, and it's something that I think to myself regularly, the difference between me and a lot of people is I'm afraid to do stuff, but I still do it anyway. And that's really the defining factor. Like when I went skydiving, I was shitting my pants almost literally. And I'm in the plane and I see the plane door open, but I'm still committed to it. I'm like, I'm fucking afraid, but I'm still gonna jump, and he's not gonna have to drag me out because I'm afraid. And that's really what makes a difference. We have to get ourselves uncomfortable, put ourselves in these positions to grow. There's no, somebody, I was texting somebody and they said that things were really hard, and somebody was, work was testing her patience, but she was like, my goal for the new year is to have to improve my temper and my patience. I'm like, well, then there you go. New Year's giving you practice already. There's no, how are you going to grow and get better if you don't go through that trial or that feeling of being uncomfortable. And I think that's the biggest thing. You're going to be afraid. It's going to be uncomfortable to step outside of those boxes and do things that are outside of the norm, but still do it anyway, because that's the only way as a person you're going to gain new experiences. You're going to have you're going to develop yourself as a person, or a better rounded person.
Yeah, no, I really love what you said there, and I totally agree. And I think you have to, fair play, and good for you for doing the skydiving. By the way, I saw that on your Instagram. It looked great. Like,
Yeah, I'm definitely recommend it at least once in your life.
Yeah. Just double check the parachute before you jump out. Like, it's good to go.
Yeah.
There's no holes in this one.
Yeah, exactly. Feel like, can I do a brief inspection on that?
Yeah, just triple check that. And I think it's great, that you did that, and it's so true what you said. Like people, we all do it. We can sometimes get in kind of ruts and get into routines, and the big thing is fear, and we like routine. Get ingrained into habits, good and bad, and like you said, you try different things out, and some people don't try different things out, down to fear. And I think, like you said, the main point is you have to get. I think so, my friend said it, one time. Get comfortable being uncomfortable, and
Mm-hmm.
that fear is always going to be there sometimes. Like in some situations, regardless. But it's how you kind of manage that and just kind of push forward and kind of try and use that as motivation. And like you said, getting like we never get used to being uncomfortable, but you have to kind of get kind of comfortable with it, because there's something you're going to benefit from that situation in the long term, if that makes sense. And that can kind of push people forward, I think. And everyone deals with things differently, but like you said, you have to go through those motions to get through it. That's the only way. You have to do it. You have to kind of put yourself in that place, whether that's working out, whether that's skydiving, whether that's whatever it is. And that's the only way you're going to grow ultimately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a term I've been using more than the word no is why not? Like, if I'm not physically harming somebody, physically harming myself, even if it's something that's relatively risky like skydiving, and I feel like I've got a safe instructor, I looked at the statistics, why not? Why not give it a try? Or if it's even if it's something like a dance or something stupid that I usually wouldn't do, because that's not what the identity I set for myself of what I'm allowed to, that confinement of that box of what I'm allowed to do. I've been using that term, why not? And just, if I don't like it, what's the worst that can happen?
Yeah, and I think that's a really good narrative to have, and like, what have you got to lose, really, isn't it? Like, why not? Like, what's the worst thing? And like you said, when you break down the chances, and you think of like skydiving, how many times you hear about things happening, like not very much, and how many checks they make, how professional the people are on those jobs. You think of people flying a plane as well, those big jumbo jets. That always blows my mind. I'm like, someone's flying that, and how many, all that training, and
Mm-hmm.
it's
All the lives are responsible for.
yeah, definitely. And I think sometimes we have to do things that are bigger than ourselves, really, don't we? We have to just dive into it. And I think it's motivating when you look at people who are successful, you know, one example, like, Gary Vee and stuff, like, where he is and what he's had to do, and, jumping out his comfort zone. And, like, you look at the build of people, Joe Rogan, for example, where he used to be, stand-up comedian. I mean, Christ, I'd be crapping myself if I had to stand on the stage and tell jokes.
Yeah.
It's all about stepping out your comfort zone, and, like, the position that you're in. You've had to step out your comfort zone to get to where you are. And I think, it's a constant process. We never really stop growing, and we're always building. We're always stepping out of comfort zone, and then there'll be something else where we have to, step out of comfort zone again. And I think one good example, like doing podcasts and doing video content. Like, you create a lot of awesome content, and I like one of yours because you showed you did a video, and I think it took you X amount of attempts to get it right.
Mm-hmm.
And you showed you posted the video of you getting it wrong or making a mistake or whatever. And that takes an element of stepping out your comfort zone to do that as well.
You always want to show the better side. We always want that. We want to portray a certain image, and so, whereas the images or the ideal, it's true to an extent of who we are, but it's not always true to the extent of, it's a part. It's like a coin. There's two sides to every coin, and you always want to show the head's part of the coin, not the tail's part, because the tail's part is the back, and it's not the best. It's not the better looking side, but it's the truth. It's part of who you are, and trying to hide the tails part, it becomes difficult, because there's only two sides to it, and you're always trying to just push one image, one view of things, and it's impossible. Eventually, that second side is going to show, and unless you get comfortable with, the people that I see that are the happiest are the people that have come to embrace both sides, come to embrace their good and their strengths and their weaknesses, and they acknowledge their weaknesses and they learn to work with their weaknesses and how to rectify it. And it makes me and think about our work. Somebody referenced and they were like, "Oh, you can never do anything wrong," and I'm like, "No, you're wrong. I make a lot of mistakes. I make a lot of bad judgment calls because I have so much going on at one time." I said, the difference is I'm willing to acknowledge it and try to do what I can to rectify it as soon as I realize it. And I'm willing, and I made a mistake, and with for a provider, one of the doctors we work with, and we had the wrong stuff sent in, and then I right away I called the doctor. And I'm like, "Hey, I did this wrong. I already started fixing it." And he's like, "Oh yeah, that's fine. Just let me know whatever you need me to do." And he's okay with it. And a lot of times we overthink, we over try to perfect what we do, and you're never going to get perfect at what you're doing without making the mistakes. And you're never gonna be perfect, no matter how perfect you think you got or you are. You're still gonna make mistakes. But it's learning to embrace and understand that really makes a difference in your life, and it's really made a difference, honestly, in my life as well. Learning to accept, oh, I'm not going to always portray this image, and redefining how I define myself and what I'm allowed to do, what I'm not allowed to do. And it's honestly, it becomes liberating when you don't want to portray that one side.
And it's that accountability and that humbleness, isn't it, that you kind of that grows within you, I think, if you do that, and people like this is why I think people sometimes fail at things or businesses collapse, because the person might not be taking accountability for what it is and not wanting to take it on board and pushing it away, and not saying, "Oh, this isn't me. No, that's not happening." And because they don't want to be wrong for whatever reason, or to, take that accountability for their mistakes. And you see this so much in like so many areas of things are going wrong, but people aren't taking accountability for it. Like the only way, and you grow by, you have to make mistakes, don't you? You have to, and it clears up all the bullshit. Like you said, if you are directing, like, "Look, I made a mistake. This happened," and the other person's like, "That's fine. We can rectify it." Then, especially if you've got customers or a certain service in place, I mean, holy shit, like the effect, the negative effect that can have, and the ripples if people don't take accountability or they don't fix those things, it works worse, by, you took what, 30 seconds or a minute or whatever to take up, pick up the phone, and that kind of stopped another something else happened. So people don't always see that. And I think, like, have you ever worked in hospitality? Have you ever worked in a restaurant before?
No, I haven't.
Like, I've had to, I've made mistakes, I remember, in restaurants, and I've had to put my hands up and say, "Oh, sorry about that." And then, because if you don't take accountability for XYZ, the customers, in any service, the customer can say something negative to like 10 other people. So it doesn't matter what the environment is, you like you said, you grow as a person by being accountable for whatever it may be.
And I completely agree with accountability. That kind of makes me think about, the new year, a lot of people are setting goals, and they're trying to reset and do new things, and nobody's gonna. You can, like, we're going to the gym. I have an accountability buddy. That might be a form of motivation to keep you going, but that's only going to last so long, because that person's not your parent, and that person's not. They're your accountability buddy, but you're not at the top of their list of priority of things to do. You have to hold yourself accountable. You have to, set the goals that you want and what what you're trying to accomplish, break down how am I going to get there. And then now it solely relies on you. I don't, if I'm going to the gym 3 days a week, and there's traffic, or well, you know what, I'm working out 3 days a week. whether I'm going to be working out at home or I'm going to work out at the gym. I'm going to figure something out. Nobody else, you can blame any external factor that you want. I was busy. So and so was asking me when I made mistakes at work. So I had 5 people asking me a question at the same time. I made them, if I didn't have all those people asking me the same question, then I wouldn't, or different questions, I wouldn't have made that mistake. That does nothing for nobody. If anything, that just shows that I'm not able to take responsibility for my errors, shows that I'm not accountable and I'm not growing as a person, that I'm not, at the end of the day, how am I going to be providing value to the company or to other individuals if I can't fess up and take ownership of whatever's going on? And that's really, it's the same exact thing in life. Customer service, working in the restaurant, a lot of people understand that concept of having to own up. Oh, I gave you the wrong order. Not looking at you like, oh, you have two heads. Like, I was at a restaurant yesterday after work, and 3 of us ordered the same thing, and the waiter that brought the food out brought the wrong items out. They gave the wrong items to the wrong people, and they messed up my order, and then looked at me like I had 2 heads, and I was like, I asked for the cheesy fries, not the regular fries. She's like, huh? I'm like, I asked for the cheesy fries. Like, don't try and look at me like I didn't ask for that, because I specified it and seen it written on the order. It does not provide a good conducive environment for personal growth. In this particular waiter, I've been going to this restaurant for a year now. This waiter has not grown at all in her ability to wait. She hasn't improved at all, and it's all because of the lack of accountability, the lack of responsibility, and the lack of being willing to step outside of her comfort zone and be a little bit more, take charge of her actions and what she does.
Yeah, that's it. And I think that's a really good example as well. And if you've been going somewhere for a certain amount of time, you're going to see that in that person, in that place, aren't you? And if you see things like a small thing like that, which can be corrected, you're paying for that. It's your, on the bigger scale of it, it's your time that you put into it and the money and vice versa. And you want a certain experience. And if someone at the forefront isn't willing to be accountable for XYZ, then you see that it's quite noticeable.
Yep.
And it's important, and you think of your comfort zone. It's okay to get things wrong. It's okay to make mistakes, and like you said, if you're able to be accountable and stuff, that's growth, really. And especially even in relationships, you have to sometimes be like, okay, that's my stuff, in that, and communicate, isn't it, really? Being like, okay, this is me, I apologize. Like, if you weren't accountable in relationships, then sometimes they don't work.
Yeah, and it won't. And part of it is because who wants to be completely responsible for somebody else's actions? If you're in a relationship, I don't want to be fully responsible for your errors, for your mistakes. That's impossible for me to be the one to take the blame 100% of the time for whatever goes wrong, whether I did it or you did it. And that's it's the same thing. It's that communication. It's that, and that also shows a sign of that person's growth and they're being a bigger person or being mature, because they're able to, and how self-aware they are as well. Because why do we not like being right? Why do we hate, like, personally, when I'm wrong, I don't like being wrong because it makes me insecure. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. It makes me feel like I'm a mess up or whatever. And it comes down to, again, our ego, our insecurities, and our level of maturity.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and I think I can definitely relate to that, because it's like, if I make mistakes, I really don't like making mistakes, and I feel like crap, and I get frustrated. But then it's knowing that and working with that, isn't it? And pushing through that and accepting, okay, XYZ's happened, gonna work on, this. And I think with the current job that I'm doing, I was kind of thrown at the deep end, you know,
Figure it out.
yeah, basically, yeah. With the computer, like, we have like a CMS system with, I can't go too much into it for, confidentiality, but it's like a database basically.
Yeah.
And it was just literally boom, there you go. And I made mistakes and stuff, and I felt bad, but I tell myself it's okay and it's part of growth and learning, and
Mhm.
I think sometimes you have to kind of that maturity, like you said in yourself, you have to kind of go to that place and just accept it and move forward. Um, because it's life, really, isn't it? Like you're gonna make mistakes, you're
Yeah.
gonna like fuck up, you're gonna, as long as you learn, I think that's the main thing.
That's honestly the biggest thing I've learned doing this job that I'm doing right now and training other people. Most of my agents, when they're newer, they're like, I'm afraid to make a mistake. And I explained right from the beginning, there's very few mistakes that you can make here that are life threatening. It might be an inconvenience to the individual or the patient, but it's not going to be life threatening. It's the life threatening stuff usually you have no part of. So you can, and most mistakes are reversible. That's the other good thing. I'm like, you put the wrong order in, you put the wrong body side, you can always fix that. Later it's just a simple phone call or backspacing and typing the right stuff. And that honestly, when you're in life, there's more areas where you can make mistakes that can affect other people, driving, being reckless, whatever. But at the same time, when trying new things, when I can't hear you.
I say it broke up then for 2 seconds, but it's back on now. So what you said something like
Oh,
making a phone call takes a couple of minutes.
yeah. No, regardless of what it is, you're trying to reach out, you're trying to make friends, you're trying to make a phone call, you're trying to, do a new hobby or new task or take on a new skill. You can make mistakes in it, but most of the time, you can make the mistakes and they're reversible. Nobody's going to die. It's not going to cost you your life savings, for 90% of the stuff out there. And it's getting comfortable with that and learning, it's not as bad as we paint it in our head. And then
Yeah,
learn from the mistake. That's really, you're good to get, you're be good to go and growth if you can do that.
yeah, yeah, most definitely. And I think we paint things bigger in our minds, and we worry about what is XYZ going to think, or what is going to happen, and then we freak out,
Mhm.
and we overthink things a lot. I think we just do that as human beings. Really, I think we can overthink the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
But once you address that, like by making a phone call or whatever, it's okay, or having a conversation. Or I think that's been a lesson for me as well. Like in jobs, I like to get things right. I like to feel confident in what I do, and I think I've had to learn the hard way by making mistakes.
Mhm.
And because I didn't, if you like, for me, sometimes I don't ask for that help, or I don't, what's the word, make that communication to get more clarity. I'll just kind of keep doing what I think is right. And then you make a mistake or it's wrong what you're doing. And then you have that conversation with your boss or whatever, and they have to explain to you. And that's sometimes worse than, just putting your hand up saying, can you just go over X, Y, Z?
Yep.
But then it's that growth, and because I think like sometimes we don't want to feel like we can't do something or something like that. But then we have to kind of put a hand up and say, can I have help with X, Y, Z?
Comes back to your humility. Comes back to humility and being self-aware. And there's part of my job as a leader in my department comes with the task of being self-aware. And in training, they've taught me, there's a little quadrant, and it's four acronyms for SWOT, and it's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And it's the same. You can
Yeah,
use the
yeah,
same thing, in your personal life. Right? Your little quadrant. What are your strengths? What are you good at? What do you think you're good at? Maybe get some reflection from people around you. I'm a good communicator, I'm a good listener. I'm confident. What are your weaknesses? I don't clean the house. I'm not organized and disheveled. Sometimes I can be short. Okay, where's the opportunity for me to grow? Where can I get better at? What type of scenarios? And then what kind of threats or what kind of things can I expect to throw me off of my routine? Would throw me off of that progress I'm making, whether that's, long day at work, at the job, or whatever else.
Yeah, definitely. And it's asking those right questions, isn't it? Ultimately making that choice, like SWOT's a really good one. And there's loads of them, isn't there? Like I think we use, is it SMART? Is it specific, measurable, achievable, realistic? And I think time, I think it is.
Mm-hmm.
And you apply like, that SWOT as well. And you look at the situation, it's kind of breaks it down, doesn't it? But I think with with everything, you have to make a choice, don't you? You have to literally make that choice and put it in place. And as a leader, as someone in that kind of, if you want to be a leader or in a certain level of authority, you have to be accountable. You have to be thinking about your mindset, your energy. It all kind of interlinks, doesn't it? Your health, your mindset, your energy. All of these things for you to be able to do whatever it is you have to do. You have to show up ultimately, to be able to do whatever it is.
Yeah. And it comes down to being, again, and on top of the mindset, the energy, your health, the self-awareness, and then it comes down to being accountable and responsible. That's the most scariest. When I took the role initially, the most scariest thing was I'm responsible for 5 people I have that I oversee, and it's like whatever they do, it's going to reflect back on me. I'm like, I've come to a point where I'm like, I'm okay with being responsible for my actions as a human, as an individual. And that only goes so far. Sometimes I was afraid to get a dog because I was afraid of being responsible for him as a living being, his health, his food, his well-being. And eventually I did, and I'm grateful, and that's the best thing I've done. And it's that fear of being responsible. I think that also holds a lot of people back because they don't want to get in trouble. They don't want to be the one that's your fault that you did this. And I think also a lot of that rolls back to the insecurities of, now I'm going to be, oh, it's my fault. I did it wrong. And there's their level of performance, or getting that one side of the coin, showing that perfect side. That's where their confidence of a person is tied, and that's not the only side of the coin. So then when the tails flips and shows for a second, and their ugly side, their imperfections show, now their entire confidence and secure, their confidence in themselves as a person is rattled.
Yeah, I think that's a really big thing for a lot of people. Having that kind of fear of being like responsible for something. It's quite an overwhelm, but I think that you have to kind of, like you said, go through those motions, don't you? You have to, especially if you're representing, a company or people, or you have like a caseload, if that makes sense. It can be quite a big thing.
I agree, and it comes with practice, and it comes with what you have, the willingness to grow as a person. But
Yeah.
ultimately, 6 months ago, I never would have thought I would have taken this position. 6 months ago, I would have, if I would have declined it or not even put the application in because I was afraid, there's a shit ton of growth that I've come through as a person that I would have completely missed out on. It's an opportunity to grow as a person, and this is the same thing no matter what the experience is. If you automatically say no, and because you're afraid, and you don't want to go do it because you're afraid, then you might miss out on a lot of opportunity to experience things in life, to get to know people, to make friends, or like even some of the individuals I work with never would have been known who they were if I didn't take this opportunity, because I wouldn't have had time to interact with them. and like some of them have become some of my better, closer friends because of the struggles that we both go through and this responsibilities we both have, and we're just able to connect on that level, and then in a deeper level in our personal lives, we're friends and we're able to hang out and outside of work and everything.
Yeah, yeah, most definitely. And I think, like you said, by not taking those chances or being in those positions, you're restricting yourself from opportunities, friends, connections, whatever it may be, you know, because of not taking that action to be in that place, and you're closing yourself off. So, like, just by applying for something and taking that leap, you know, you don't know what's going to be on the other side or what's going to open up for you. And it's one of the things that I stress to people, just trying things out, and if you don't apply for something, you get the answers no, basically. If you apply, you might get it and you might not, but you have to just take that leap, and or even send an email, like for guests for podcasts, whatever it may be, or asking someone out. If you don't put that step forward, it's going to stay in the same place.
And and it's funny because my stepbrother, he recently moved down to Florida, and he came up with a great idea for Universal, this Universal Studios, the amusement park. And he was like, not everybody who goes to Universal wants to be taking pictures and documenting when they're there with their family. He's like, oh, it would be a great idea to blah blah blah, and you know, come up with a plan to do that with Universal. He sent an email to Universal, and then they responded with his idea. And they were like, put a business plan together and let's have a meeting on, X, Y, and Z, whatever. You could say, he could have been like, he could have wrote himself off and said no. Oh, that's not a great idea. What if Universal responds, and what if it's a stupid idea, or I don't get a good plan together? But you never know if you get a response or not. Whether
Yeah,
they're gonna move forward with it or not. I don't know. Only time will tell. But again, it's just taking the chance and just saying, why not? What's the worst that can happen? And what if it becomes too overwhelming and it's too much for me to do? Well, then at that point I can just shift and I'll figure it out then. But again, why not?
yeah. I think that's something that I really had to learn to do, especially like when even with our relation, our friendship and stuff. Like, I saw you on Gary V, and I was like, wow, this guy's great. I really want to have him on my podcast, and I reached out to you, and I could have not reached out to you down to fear or what you're going to say. And we've done multiple podcasts. We're doing one now. And that's one of the things I had to get over in being a podcaster. Reaching out to people. And looking at someone who's might have X amount of followers, or or level of authority. But by just sending an email and just saying, look, this is XYZ, you don't know. The people sometimes respond, some people do respond, but if you don't take that initial leap, and especially like your you say your brother, I think,
What's up,
you
bro?
know
Yeah.
so yeah. And send that email to big company like Universal. It's an amazing thing that's happening, and they do respond, and it just shows you, it doesn't matter if you're sending an email to Universal, or another person, individual.
Mhm.
um just taking that leap, because you don't know what is going to unfold, and you don't want that regret of being like, oh, I should have sent that email or whatever.
And that's something that I truly live my life trying to avoid regret. You're not going to be able to, there's a saying, may have heard it, regret, discipline weighs ounces, regret weighs pounds. um Regret, the feeling of regret, when I think back, even growing up, how I could have handled things different, and I was so close to doing it, but I let fear hold me back of the unknown. And then I regret those additional 5 years I could have had out of living it from that environment that I was in, if I would have ran away when I was going to run away, or and that feeling alone makes me not want that for the rest of my life. I don't want, when I die, I don't want to regret not having tried more, experienced more, made more friends, done more things, because you live now, you have your life right now, you're above ground. There are people who didn't live life, they didn't try things. And then, when they died, they're like, oh, there's so much I still wanted to do. They die in that accident or whatever, or on their deathbed, and they're like, I didn't talk to so and so, I didn't ask that girl out, I didn't ask this person out, I didn't try this game, I didn't travel to this location, I didn't try that food. And there's nothing you can do at that point except just wallow in it, in that feeling. And I want to try everything. I want to try everything. I want to go places. If I don't like it, again, I'll deal with it at that point. And I don't know. And I'm not going to, I don't want my last day to be, I didn't live my life trying my best to try and grow into a better person every day.
No, definitely. I love that. And I think it's so true that, people, sometimes regret things and, they're stuck in that place and there's nothing else they can do. And I think, like you said, by your experience of having, having a little taste of regret, with things, it's that motivation to push you forward to not be in that place, if that makes sense. And to live your best life every day. Like you said, we're both above ground, and there's a lot of people who'd love to be, above ground who aren't. And you don't want to have regrets and what ifs and all the rest of it. It's something that we should all, avoid regretting. We should say avoid. We shouldn't to try and not be in that place of regret, too much, if that makes sense. Because we're both healthy, and lots of other healthy people out there, able to do things. And even if even if people aren't healthy, there's still things they can do. So it doesn't particularly matter on people's situation, I think. Because you see articles of people who've got certain health conditions or whatever, and they've gone and done something pretty amazing. And then so I think there's no excuse in some way, depending on certain people's circumstances. It's all kind of links to that accountability, isn't it? Mindset, in deciding I am gonna live my best life, I'm gonna try X, Y, Z.
And even like you said, we're rather healthy, the
Yeah.
young individuals, but there's still, you think of, there's, even for people who are not healthy, there is a way 99% of the time for you to do things that you think about the Special Olympics. Those are people, the Paralympics, those are people that statistically and according to society, they're unable to do things. They're unable to powerlift, they're unable to swim, they're unable to play these sports, these games, yet they didn't stop. There's a guy I follow on Instagram, Big Z. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's a wrestler over here. He doesn't have no legs, but he's like one of the top wrestlers in his division. And it's amazing watching him pin somebody with legs, and he pins them down just using his upper body and his arms. And it just blows my mind. I'm like, if a guy that doesn't have no legs, just has his upper torso, is able to accomplish something like that, automatically you think, and you said you're wrestling, you need your legs. That's a huge factor. And he's gone and he's shown it's not limiting yourself, not putting yourself in that box, the discipline and the accountability to be in the gym and work extra. And it's not saying it's going to be an easy road, and coming from my background, 6-7 years, I've had to grow up really fast and learn everything that most people learn in 18 years in that short period of time. Not easy at all, but it's definitely worth it, especially if you don't want to go out saying, oh, my career got cut short because I didn't try harder, or because you can look back and say, in this day or this opportunity or this conversation, I knew I should have done that and I didn't. I kept my mouth shut, or I held back a little bit, or I didn't put my all in on that workout, and that's why I didn't succeed at what I'm trying to do, or I didn't get that job opportunity, or whatever it is.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that's really inspiring, that wrestler guy you mentioned, who, has no legs, and he's able to do, wrestling and take people down who have legs. And you've inside, like I said, that dedication, that training, and and what you do in like training as well. It's that discipline, and it's really important, isn't it? And to not have regrets, and it's like just showing up, isn't it? You have to show up. And it makes me think about like in the current relationship that I'm in, like my girlfriend was really nervous, and we didn't meet the first time, and I was like, okay, let's meet. We hadn't really kind of had a date in a year or so, and the first time was meant to meet, like she like cancelled and was like nervous. I was like, okay, well, we'll meet next time. And next time came, and then she got nervous and like cancelled. And then the third time, I was like, this is the final like straw now. And then we, she turned up and we both met. But it's like, she had to decide to meet, step out of comfort zone, to go on that date.
Yeah.
And I had to do the same as well. I had to show up and go on my comfort zone to show up and do the same. And it's like, we're still together now after a couple of months. But anyway, like if we hadn't have taken that leap and jumped out into the comfort zone, out of a comfort zone, do you know what I mean? Wouldn't have what we have now currently.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like one example. Just came to mind.
No, that's exactly how it is with everything else in life.
Yeah.
Sending that one message, hey, let's try this, or let's meet up, and cold feet. It happens. It happens to everybody. And then it's just, are you gonna allow the cold feet to stop you, or are you gonna power through and keep going? That's really what makes a difference. And with time, practice, and experience, you get better and better at pushing through those cold feet and just showing up. It's like you mentioned, like Joe Rogan. I think you said he did comedy before he's doing what he's doing now.
Yeah.
And you said, you would probably crap yourself if you had to stand up and tell jokes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's funny because that's one of the things I want to try. I want to try stand-up comedy. And like I've been thinking about it for the last couple of months and trying to like get a little get down together. But it's like think about it, the first time any comedian stands on stage is like, so even people that are well-known comedians, you can only imagine how nervous they were the first time, and they just got better with time and practice and practice and time, and going through that feeling and pushing through it, and then see, oh, it's not actually as bad as I thought it was, or it works out, or people actually like those jokes, and you're able to, they're able to continue growing as a comedian and get to the level they are.
Yeah, that's it. And have you ever heard of Joey Diaz?
No.
I'll show you essentially some of his content. He's really funny. He's a stand-up, and he's one of Joe Rogan's friends. And like it's like you said, like I suppose if you just get out there and do it, like it's a bit like they talk about bombing, don't they? Sometimes like you have to probably bomb in that position.
Yeah, I know. I've seen him. I'm just not really good with
celebrity. Yeah. But yeah, like I really think like we covered some good topics today. And is there anything else that you kind of come to mind, or anything? Is there anything you're working on? Anything you want to promote? Anything that you want to put out there? Or where can people find you on social media and things like that?
For right now, I'm still doing a lot of self-awareness, a lot of personal growth. I did restart my podcast this year on Spotify. Nice. So, I did drop my first episode, I think last week.
Yeah, nice.
On Spotify. It's Rise Body Soul podcast. And, it's talking again about identity and figuring out why it's important to know who you are as a person before you can progress and get anywhere you want to go. Right now, everything's kind of low key, and just figuring out where I want to go for me is with Rise Body Soul, and the way that I feel best. That should things should progress in that way. not just because I feel like that's the standard or the technical way things should go.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of personal growth, and I'm not, I'm looking forward to 2022 because it's a new year. Another, every day that I'm alive, I'm looking to for exciting things to happen with Rise Body. So
Yeah. No, that's awesome. It's awesome, Iking. And like, I'm really, grateful to be your friend and grateful that we can do, this. And, I think you're doing great in all that you're doing. And, I wish you all the, continued success in, your life and everything that you do. And, I'll promote whatever, whatever you're doing, I'll put it out there. And it's been great talking to you today and catching up and talking about the topics that we have, because I think they're really really important, really important topics and discussions that everyone should tune into. And yeah, I look forward to speaking to you again soon.
yeah, and I agree, and I look forward to catching up again on another podcast or
Yeah,
just catching up. And whole big thing. 2022 is it's going to be a big year. Set that
yeah,
out right at the beginning of the year. It's going to be a big year. Great things are going to happen for you, for your podcast, and
yeah,
for what's going on in your life.
yeah. No, cheers, man, and same to you. I wish you all the best as well, and I think it will be a good one. But hope you have a great day, and I'll speak soon.
All right, Adam.
Cheers, man.